Prison violence isn't random. It isn't chaotic. And it's never just about anger or impulse. When gangs clash behind bars, every movement, every weapon, every hit is part of a strategy. A cold, calculated chess game played by men with nothing to lose and everything to prove. What you're about to hear isn't a myth. It isn't a dramatization. It's one of the most violent real confrontations ever recorded inside an American maximum security prison. A riot that turned a routine morning into a battlefield, and a simple target into the spark that ignited a war. This is the story of what happens when two of the deadliest prison gangs meet head-on, and no one is willing to back down. The prison was Pelican Bay State Prison, a place designed to contain the most dangerous inmates in the system. Inside these concrete walls lived men who controlled drug networks, ordered murders on the streets, and enforced their rules with absolute brutality. Two groups in particular dominated the yard. The Norteños, known for discipline, structure, and military-style organization. The Aryan Brotherhood, feared for their ruthlessness, precision, and willingness to die rather than lose face. Tension between these two groups had been simmering for months. Weapons had been made. Alliances had shifted. Whispers circulated in the cells. A hit is coming. But no one knew when. And that uncertainty is what made Pelican Bay dangerous. Because when two organizations with armies on the outside prepare for violence, on the inside, the slightest spark can turn the yard into a war zone. It began on a cold, ordinary morning. Inmates filed into the yard for their daily program, walking laps, doing push-ups, sharing quiet conversations, and scanning the environment like predators. Everything seemed normal. No shouting, no arguments, no signs of trouble. But hidden beneath the calm was strategy. Because among the dozens of inmates walking the yard was a low-ranking Norteño known simply as Ghost. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't a threat. He wasn't even on the radar of most officers. But today, he was marked for death. The Aryan Brotherhood had selected him as the target of a planned hit. Not because of something he did, but because of something someone else didn't do. And inside prison, when a gang sets a plan in motion, they finish it, no matter what. Just after 9:40 a.m., the routine shifted. A group of Aryan Brotherhood soldiers moved in formation, slowly tightening their circle around Ghost. Their steps were too deliberate, their spacing too measured. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment conflict. This was a green light. And in Pelican Bay, a green light means only one thing. Violence is about to erupt. An officer watching from the gun rail noticed something off. Two of the AB members reached into their waistbands at the same time. A synchronized motion, a telltale sign of hidden weapons. Before he could issue a warning, the first attack began. The weapon used in the opening strike was small, sharp, and deadly. A razor blade melted into a toothbrush handle, light enough to hide, sharp enough to slice through skin like paper. The first swing cut deep into Ghost's forearm. He didn't fall. He didn't scream. He simply staggered backward, blood pouring down his arm, confused, shocked, and suddenly aware that he had walked into a trap. Then came the second strike. Another AB soldier rushed him with a metal rod sharpened to a point. Ghost dodged the blow by inches, stumbling as more attackers closed in. The attack was fast, coordinated, professional. And within seconds, Ghost was surrounded. But the Aryan Brotherhood had miscalculated one thing. Ghost wasn't alone. 10 yards away, a group of Norteños saw what was happening. Their reaction was immediate. There was no shouting, no panic, no confusion. The men simply abandoned what they were doing and moved. Not running, not charging, but advancing with silent purpose. This is the power of a prison gang. The structure, the discipline, the expectation that every man stands for the group. And then it happened. 3 Norteños reached behind their backs, lifted their shirts, and revealed weapons of their own. Blades made from bone, handles wrapped in cloth, edges sharpened for weeks on concrete floors. They weren't drawing these to threaten. They were drawing them to kill. The yard erupted into violence so sudden and so explosive that even veteran officers later described it as a war breaking out in the middle of a normal morning. The Norteños formed a protective wall around Ghost, pushing him backward while simultaneously counterattacking. The AB soldiers tightened their formation, refusing to retreat, meeting the advance head-on. 2 gangs, 2 codes, 2 armies with homemade weapons and battlefield training. What happened next lasted less than a minute, but left the yard covered in blood, bodies, and fallen weapons. The first major clash had begun, and no one, not the officers, not the inmates, not even the shot callers, could stop what came next. What began as a targeted hit quickly escalated into something much bigger. The yard became a cauldron of violence boiling over. The Aryan Brotherhood, outnumbered but fiercely trained, fought with brutal efficiency. Their weapons, crafted from everyday items, sliced, stabbed, and crushed. Padlocks swung inside socks, cracked skulls with devastating force. Makeshift rods and sharpened pieces of metal became instruments of survival and death. Opposing them, the Norteños responded not just with raw aggression, but with precision. Bone shanks carved to razor sharpness flashed under the harsh sun. Blades hidden inside mouths, folded under sleeves, struck with surgical accuracy. This wasn't chaos. This was war. For 17 seconds, the yard echoed with the sounds of flesh meeting steel, grunts of pain, and the harsh commands of officers trying and failing to regain control. In prison conflicts, every movement is a message. Every strike a statement. The attack didn't start by chance. It was planned down to the smallest detail. A simple sound acted as the signal. A handball bouncing against concrete. Once, twice, 3 times. This was the trigger. For Big Mark, an Aryan Brotherhood enforcer, it was the cue to launch the strike. For the Norteños, it was the call to retaliate, not as scattered individuals, but as a coordinated unit. Their swift counterattack shocked everyone, especially correctional officers. As the violence intensified, the yard transformed into a war zone. Men with knives and rods lunged, parried, and struck with lethal intent. Blood pooled beneath their feet. The sounds of shouts, screams, and metal scraping against bone filled the air. But this was more than physical fighting. It was a battle for control, a message to rivals, a fight to preserve honor, power, and territory inside the prison walls. The Aryan Brotherhood soldiers formed a tight defensive triangle, backs pressed together, weapons at the ready. A last stand against overwhelming odds. But even their discipline couldn't stop the relentless assault. The chaos might have stayed confined to the yard, but fate intervened when the chow hall doors swung open. 14 more Norteños emerged, freshly fed but ready for battle. Their arrival shifted the balance dramatically. Outnumbered and pushed to the edge, the Aryan Brotherhood soldiers braced themselves. What had started as a planned assassination attempt had become an all-out yard war. The correctional officers scrambled, trying to contain the violence, but the scale of the clash was beyond their control. In any riot, there are 2 sides to the story: the fighters and the shot callers. On the sidelines, 2 men stood watching, unmoved by the chaos raging before them. Red Jack, a high-ranking Aryan Brotherhood leader, and Tomas Blade Reyes, the Norteño lieutenant. They were not mere spectators. They were commanders, watching the battlefield with calculated eyes. They understood that this wasn't just a fight, it was a strategic message to the prison administration and rival gangs alike. The yard was their chessboard, and every move was designed to demonstrate who truly controlled the prison. With the violence spiraling, correctional officers activated the gun rails. Armed with rifles loaded with non-lethal foam-tipped rounds, they aimed to subdue the fighters without bloodshed. The shots rang out, hitting some inmates, sending them to the ground, but failing to fully stop the attack. Frustration and rage boiled over. A warning shot was fired into the dirt, and when it was ignored, a real bullet was fired. The first lethal shot of a riot. Luis Toro Medina, a formidable Norteño, fell. His fall sparked a new wave of fury. Toro's collapse was more than the fall of a man. It was a call to arms. The Norteños surged forward with renewed vengeance. The fighting grew more vicious. Every slash, every blow, every movement carried the weight of survival and retribution. Officers shouted commands to ceasefire. But in the storm of blood and rage, commands became background noise. Amid the chaos, Ghost, the initial target, made a decision that would change the course of the riot. Bleeding and cornered, instead of fleeing, he advanced. His courage inspired those around him. But more importantly, it drew the attention of Blade. The Norteño lieutenant stepped forward, unarmed, walking calmly into the heart of the violence. His arrival marked a shift, from reckless combat to strategic control. With a few words, Blade commanded his men to fall back and reset. The sudden order confused everyone, but it was a move designed to expose the true motives behind the riot. Behind the scenes, the riot was more than a battle for dominance. It was about a contract hit gone wrong. The original target was a man known as the Preacher, a defector from the Aryan Brotherhood. When he was unexpectedly moved to segregation, the Brotherhood scrambled to find another target. Ghost was chosen, but Blade's knowledge of this deception cracked the riot's facade. His revelation stunned the Aryan Brotherhood and shifted power dynamics in the prison. With violence subsiding, correctional officers moved in. The riot ended not with force alone, but with the silent authority of the gang leaders. Men were cuffed, bodies tended to, and the prison's fragile order restored. But the scars of that day remained. Men died. Men survived. And the message was clear. In prison, power is brutal, calculated, and deadly. As the dust settled, the prison yard was a battlefield littered with bodies, some writhing in pain, others motionless. Medical teams rushed in, triaging the wounded amidst the lingering tension. The cries of pain mixed with whispered threats. For many inmates, survival was not guaranteed. Behind the walls, the violence had left invisible wounds, deep scars in alliances and rivalries that would not heal. The prison administration launched a full investigation. Officers interrogated captured inmates. But inside Pelican Bay, truth is elusive. Lies, half-truths, and silence are weapons as powerful as blades. The biggest revelation came from Blade's disclosure. That the hit on Ghost was a cover for a deeper agenda. A hidden puppet master was pulling strings, using gangs as pawns in a dangerous game. Behind the scenes, an unexpected figure emerged. An inmate with ties to outside criminal networks and influence over multiple gangs. A man who had ordered the hit on the Preacher and orchestrated the chaos to consolidate his control. His identity remained secret to most, but his power was undeniable. The riot was not just a turf war, it was a calculated move in a larger plan. In the weeks following the riot, the balance of power shifted. The Norteños asserted dominance over the yard. The Aryan Brotherhood retreated, nursing wounds and reevaluating strategies. Ghost, once a low-ranking inmate, became a symbol of resilience. Blade's leadership was solidified. But the prison was far from peace. The hidden puppet master's game was only beginning. The riot was a message to the prison administration. Control is an illusion. Behind every cell door, a complex web of power, fear, and loyalty governs. For inmates and officers alike, survival depends on understanding these unseen forces. And for those who underestimate them, the consequences are deadly. What happens when prison gangs clash? Violence? Yes. Bloodshed? Certainly. But also strategy, loyalty, and betrayal. A deadly dance that never truly ends. Because in the shadows of the prison yard, power is the ultimate weapon, and every move can be a matter of life or death. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.